Good morning. Welcome to our presentation here this morning. My name is Sarah Stein, and I have the pleasure of introducing our presenter, Dr. Sharon Gould Steinberg. Today, she's going to be talking about from stress to resilience, resource and inspiration. And the intent of today, and I'll let her really spearhead that discussion, is to provide support to our frontline providers, our frontline responders who are really carrying a lot of the tasks of getting us through this crisis at this time. And we as a mental health community are banding together to provide support to those who are on the front lines. We want this to be as useful as possible for you as frontline providers. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Sharon Gould Steinberg. She is a clinical psychologist here in Ann Arbor, and she got her PhD at the University of Michigan and has then done her pre and postdoctoral training at clinical psychology at the University of Michigan in a few different capacities. She also has many years of experience as a clinical faculty and lecturer at the university. Now she's in full-time private practice and has started two really incredible groups. One, she's affiliated with Partners in Healing, which is an organization here in Ann Arbor of 3 different therapists that provide training and consultation to therapists, and really focused and just kind of at the top of the line trauma-informed training at this point in time. She also co-founded with Karen Lund, Therapist Refresh, which she will be talking about a little bit more today throughout the presentation, which is an organization to provide resources and inspiration to therapists and other healers, including, of course, all frontline responders. And the organization is really dedicated to taking care of healers as they take care of others. So now, actually, without further ado, I will welcome Dr. Sharon Gould Steinberg. Thank you.
The co-sponsors of this event, Michigan Frontline Support Group, that's come together just in the last week or two of mental health people wanting to make resources and referrals available for frontline providers. It's been really inspiring to see nurses coming together, to see mental health people and other healthcare providers come together to take care of each other at this time. So I want to start by acknowledging that this pandemic we're facing is unprecedented. And yet human suffering and human beings facing suffering with courage, creativity, and resilience is not new to us. And we're here as mental health professionals. We have the privilege not only of helping people with their psychological suffering, but of watching people recover, watching them be resilient, watching them meet, and helping them to meet stress and come out most often stronger on the other side. So we want to share with you what we have learned on that journey that may be relevant for us here. You all, I fully trust, are going to be receiving excellent support from the organizations you work for. We're not affiliated with any of them. We want to be kind of your next line of defense. It's going to take a village to get through this, and we're here to support you. Some of the things we know that help people get through stress or get through trauma is knowing that they're not alone. So we're here in your community as people who care about you, that are willing to bring resources we have also to support you. And I wanted to start today. I'm going to be explaining to you what some of your mental health risks may be, as well as potential for growth, and giving you a lot of tools to just help, ones that you can use in the moment before, during, and after your workday. I want you to feel free to take the ones that work for you, that resonate with you. Let go of the ones that don't. Adapt them as needed. You have the wisdom to know what's best for you. In our meeting of planners yesterday, someone had the suggestion that if you hear things that sound like they might be good tools for you, jot a note, maybe on an index card, maybe on your phone, have available the practices that you think might best support you. And I want to begin just with a brief practice to help us kind of all land here, to all find a little bit of calm and resource inside. And some of the tools I demonstrate now may be ones that will help you on the front lines too. And then I'll go into the formal presentation in the slides. So I want to invite you, if it's comfortable for you, perhaps to bring your hands to your heart. You could have open palms, one on top of the other. You could have your bottom hand in a fist on your heart and the other hand holding it. It's a beautiful short meditation I learned from a mentor of mine, Janina Fisher. And as you feel your hands on your heart, right here, right now, I invite you to bring awareness to the weight, the heaviness or lightness of your hands on your heart. And to bring your awareness to the temperature, the warmth or coolness of your hands on your heart. And feel your breath coming to meet your hands on your heart. And once again, feel the weight of your hands on your heart. And the temperature of your hands on your heart. And your breath coming to meet your hands on your heart. And as you continue to feel this resource of self-touch, allow to come to mind, if you like, the image of somebody, a real person, an animal, a spiritual presence for you, somebody who helps you feel protected, safe, and loved. Again, that can be somebody real, somebody imagined. It can be somebody who's still with us. It can be somebody who's passed on. In our imagination, these resources are always available. And just see if you can feel that person, that guardian angel, that pet who loves you, whoever it is for you. Feel their presence right here, right now. Maybe sensing what their face looks like, or imagine feeling a hug or embrace from them. The beauty of our minds is that if we imagine something deeply enough, it's as if it's happening. Even in this time of physical distancing, we can call upon our memory or imagination to feel the resource we need. And as you sense this presence with you, I invite you to give yourself a little hug. Self-hugs are still okay, ever available. And if it's comfortable for you, perhaps just gently stroke your opposite arm between the elbow and shoulder of the other side. You'll hear me talk about in a few minutes that this kind of touch, called havening touch, that helps us find a safe haven, is shown to create delta waves in the brain that calm the amygdala, the alarm center. Again, just take in a little bit of this hug, this soothing. These are resources you can have with you anytime, anywhere. And maybe allow to come to mind a word or a phrase that anchors this experience for you. And repeat it to yourself 3 times right now. And any time in the days or weeks to come that you repeat these words, it will bring you back to this feeling. Take note of what brings you back here, the image or phrase. Then we'll take in a deep breath together and release it. Okay. So I welcome you now to bring your awareness to the slides, to my presence with you. And I'm going to give you an overview of what we're going to do, a little preview of where we're going. I'm going to outline for you what your risks are, the mental health risks. There's a continuum of them. I am also going to be outlining the risks or potential for growth and healing. And then I'm going to give you a number of practical tools that address different aspects of your experience. How to deal with emotions, how to deal with activation in your body, how to deal with your mind, how to reach for and create support, how to leave work behind at the end of your day or shift. And then, as Sarah said, we're going to have time for your questions. And you'll hear me throughout this presentation talk about mindfulness, because it's one of our most powerful tools. And mindfulness doesn't mean you need to know how to meditate and clear your mind. Mindfulness means paying attention in the moment with curiosity and compassion. We know that the part of our brain that can do that, that can observe what's happening to us right now with this attitude of curiosity and compassion, rather than judgment or analysis, has a pathway to calm the alarm signals in our brain that analysis and thinking doesn't. So you'll hear me talk about that. That's going to infuse a lot of the resources. Again, you don't need to be a practice meditator. You just we'll hear many invitations from me to pay attention right here, right now. You're also going to hear me talk about a lot that we want to limit your exposure to suffering and stress. I know you're going to have long shifts. I know there's going to be lots of exposure to perhaps frightening things or sad things you're not going to be able to control your exposure to, but we're going to give you tips about how in small moments, how at the end of your day, to bring your awareness somewhere else to limit your exposure that way. That's going to be another important theme. So we have been hearing from you guys and from other people about some of the common emotions. It is really likely you're having lots of emotions, intense emotions, maybe conflicting emotions. We know, thankfully, about emotions that they tend to ebb and flow, kind of like waves. I often encourage my clients to remember that big feelings are going to come. We want to try to surf those waves rather than struggle within them, and that they will also ebb. But some of the feelings you may have, there's a lot of fear around, fear about getting sick, fear about death, fear about losing people that we love. There's a lot of fears about not being able to protect people we love or our patients. There's fears about not being protected enough. There's also anger at how much our lives have changed, anger at all that we have to face. And there's sadness and there's grief. What I'm noticing about grief, indeed, many of us will know people who struggle or die. Much of the grief right now people are having is an anticipated grief. Our minds, our human brains are predictor machines. They have a built-in negativity bias to try to keep us safe. They anticipate things that haven't come yet. So sometimes when these waves of grief are coming, try to observe which ones are about something happening now, or which ones are your brain imagining something that might happen, although the chances are greatest that the vast majority of us are going to get through this. We also are hearing that there is fear of fear. There's fear that, people, healthcare workers are afraid for their patients' well-being, their own well-being, their family's well-being, and they're afraid of their physical well-being and their emotional well-being. What are they going to be exposed to on the front lines? And there's a fear of post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. I want to perhaps affirm there is that risk, and yet there is also this big chance for resilience, and there's a whole continuum of risks. Our minds want to go to the catastrophic, oh my God, I'll develop PTSD and I'll never recover. There's a whole continuum of kinds of stress that you may experience. I just want to briefly name some of those. Burnout is that experience of experiencing too much suffering that takes a toll on us, that exhausts us mentally and physically. Burnout is more transient than post-traumatic stress disorder. It is often alleviated with a change of routine, a change of duties, a vacation, some time off. Again, I know that time off may be a little bit down the road, but burnout is more quickly ameliorated. There's a concept in the field of compassion fatigue. Karin Lund and I at Therapist Refresh like to reframe this as empathy fatigue. We kind of believe that compassion, the more compassion we give each other, that kind of makes our heart grow. It's more of a renewable energy. But there is a risk of empathy fatigue. And the difference between these two, empathy is when we feel somebody else's feelings as if it's happening to us. That's exposure. That's mental exposure for us to someone else's suffering. If we take it on, which is quite natural for those of us who go into caring, healing professions to do. And yet, if we feel like it's happening to us, we increase our risk. We want to try, this is just an aspiration, at moments to remind ourselves, I'm here with another person who's feeling this. It's not me right now who's going through this thing. I want instead to send as much compassion, love, loving kindness to this person rather than feeling it as if it's happening to me now. In the resources we'll send you when we send the slides, there's a beautiful video by a monk named Ricard Mathieu who explains this difference. There's a risk for moral injury. You may be asked to make ethical decisions, choices about what care to give to whom or to withhold from whom that may conflict with your values. That is one risk. There's the risk of what we call an acute stress reaction, which is kind of like a milder, more temporary form of post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD, for those of you who don't know the symptoms, involve most predominantly feeling like the bad thing that happened, that is about to happen again or still happening, which leads us to be often in a prolonged or frequent state of fight or flight, as if we're kind of fighting that grizzly bear again. It also can lead us to be in a state of shutdown. Like humans, we can also kind of play possum sometimes, or if we get really hopeless or feeling powerless, we may feel lethargy, numbness, that is also quite distressing as fight and flight. Or we might even get caught in a freeze response where we feel like we want to run or we want to fight, and yet something else tells us we can't, like having our foot on the gas pedal and the brake of our car at the same time. So the re-experiencing symptoms, the ups and downs of emotions, the feeling like it's happening again in nightmares or in flashbacks, are hallmark signs of PTSD, along with the wish to avoid anything that reminds us of any of that. But an acute stress reaction is having some of those symptoms that last for a shorter time. The good news is that even when we face overwhelming events, most of us recover, something like 80% of the time without intervention within 3 to 6 weeks. That is some good news. PTSD is that reaction for longer, that time, is one risk if you yourself experience feeling overwhelmed beyond your coping capacities. You also, as healthcare providers, may experience what we call vicarious trauma, sometimes also known as secondary trauma or secondary traumatic stress, which is because of this empathy. If we witness other people who are traumatized, we can feel that as if it's happening to us. And we can develop a combination of symptoms of PTSD or acute stress reaction from that, along with symptoms of burnout, perhaps becoming cynical, perhaps feeling disillusioned, with a spiritual crisis as well as the PTSD. So those are some of the risks. We know some of the things that increase risk. They are, the more we're exposed to something, the greater our risk is. So the greater volume of seeing suffering, the frequency of it, and the ratio of your caseload or patient load does make a difference. I am hoping that there will be times that people will rotate through different services to be able to limit your exposure. If you are newer to the field, you may bring a lot of passion and energy that is quite wonderful, but not be as buffered by some of the long experience of having gotten through hard things professionally before, or feeling like you can rely on deeply learned and practiced skills. If you have a personal history of trauma or an intergenerational history of trauma, your grandparents, your ancestors, the community you identify with has experienced trauma, that can be in your DNA as well. And you may find yourself not only dealing with the current stressors, but feeling like memories of your own trauma are being triggered. If you are a trauma survivor, I want you also to know you have all that deep courage and strength to get through things, and to know how to carry on and function and be able to manage, which will also serve you. But you might want to take extra care of yourself. Being isolated increases our risk. That's why we're here today as a community. And lacking training, protection, and support again, why we are here today. And there's going to be a community of mental health people available within your organizations and within this other line of community support to keep giving you resources to help to know what to do. I really like to share this quote by Naomi Rachel Remen. The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. I say this because if you develop symptoms from stress to PTSD or vicarious trauma, it is not your fault. It is not your personal failing. It is what happens when we go into deep surf. We're going to give you as many tools as we can. If they don't fully protect you, that's not because you haven't done enough. When I give talks like this, I often use the metaphor of firefighters who, even if they're going to the gym and doing their yoga and have a great family system and a great spiritual practice, if they inhale enough smoke, they will suffer smoke inhalation. So I want to both offer hope and I want to normalize whatever suffering you have is not your failing or weakness. So how do we mitigate this risk for stress, burnout, PTSD, or secondary traumatic stress? I want to articulate my definition of trauma, which is simply an event or events that overwhelm our coping capacities. Having said that, that means the same event might traumatize one of us and not another. We also know alongside of trauma is our human capacity for resilience. Resilience is when, for whatever reason, that we are lucky enough or supported enough to have our coping capacities be able to respond well enough to the stress we face. So what I want to offer you now are a series of tools from how to move from places of stress to optimizing our chances of resilience, beginning with how do we cope with powerful emotions. I heard this acronym recently, to roar with emotions, meaning to recognize, observe, accept, and release. This is a practice that is similar to Tara Brach's practice of RAIN that some of you may know, which is to recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. Both of these approaches bring mindfulness and kindness, self-compassion, to being with our powerful emotions. These are practices that help soften them. I love this image of the little girl with the lion. There is a big roar there. This is a powerful animal, perhaps with a powerful feeling. And yet, if we can embrace them with this love, this kindness in this little girl's face, they pass by those waves. They ebb more comfortably. So what does this look like? A big feeling comes, a fear, an anger, a grief or anticipated grief. We name it. We give it a name. I'm having the fear that I won't be able to cope. I'm having the fear I'll be sick. I'm having the fear I'll lose people that I love. We name it. By naming it, by giving it words, it makes it a little easier to bear. Then we observe it. We just try to step back like we're watching it from the balcony, again with curiosity and compassion. How do I feel this fear right now? Maybe it's a tightening in my chest. Maybe it's a racing heartbeat. Maybe it's an awful image in my mind. Okay, hello. Even by just using the language of, I'm having the thought that, I'm seeing the image of, I'm having the feeling of, gives us 1 degree of separation. We then want to accept or allow what's here. Our natural instinct is to avoid, is to say, I shouldn't be feeling this. I don't want to feel this. I want to distract from feeling this. But everything we resist just comes back more intensely, right? The poet Rumi encourages us, all our feelings, to welcome them as a guest into our house. To say, okay, hello, you're here. I wish you weren't here today, but you're here. Have a seat, have a cup of tea. I'm going to allow you. I'm just going to be with you. You might quiet sooner if I do that. And And then we release, or in Tara Brach's method, we nurture. Release might mean, hello, you're here, I welcome you, I see you. I'm going to take a deep breath and let you go. Or I'm going to do something to nurture myself. I'm going to be kind to myself. I'm going to soothe myself. I'm going to be with this emotion kindly. That's roar or rain. I also want to offer you some tools to regulate your nervous system. What we know is there are a lot more pathways from our body up to our brain than from our brain to our body. So it is actually easier if we can calm our body where lots of our emotions live. It is easier to calm our thoughts and soothe our emotions than it is when we're really triggered to be able to use our thinking brain to calm feelings and body. Dan Siegel, a wonderful psychiatrist out in California, uses what he calls the fist model of the brain. We have our brain stem back here that helps regulate, our breath and our hunger and some of this fight and flight. Deep inside of our brain, we have our alarm signals, our attachment signals, part of the emotional brain that we share with other mammals. And up here, we have our wonderful frontal lobes that has helped you all learn the science that helps you do your professions. But what happens when the alarm signals go off here? Dan Siegel says we flip our lid. We can't access our frontal lobes. We can't access our good thinking. But if we can calm our bodies, our frontal lobes come back down. When we flip our lids, our thinking becomes very black and white, very all or none, very catastrophic. So we want to calm the body, bring our lid back down. We can think with more nuance. So how do we do this? One practice that's been used in the military is what I call a really powerful 1, 2, 3 punch. Any of these first three on your list are great by themselves. They're even better together. We want to breathe, ground, and use safe place imagery. We want to breathe in a way that our exhales are longer than our inhales. When we do that, it calms our nervous system. It calms our sympathetic nervous system and triggers our parasympathetic, rest and digest nervous system. Okay, so it can be try this with me, a big huffy breath. Like what we do at the end of a shift that signals to our body, we're done. Or it can just be a slow, gentle, again, you might try this with me, inhaling for 4, 2, 3, 4, and exhaling for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Adapt for you, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just giving you the mini version here. And then we ground, which means feeling the ground under you. Maybe your feet are on the floor and you can press into the floor. Maybe there's a chair or a bed or a wall beneath you, behind you. Feel the points of contact with your legs, hips, with your back, or if there's support behind your neck and head. Just feel into the ground, something right here, right now, holding you, supporting you. And then invite safe place imagery, a real place, an imaginary place. Maybe not one you miss too much right now, but one you call up in mind, in nature, in a building, somewhere on vacation, or floating on clouds. And just imagine that place like you imagined your source of protection before. Anytime we bring in our senses to imagine something or feel it right here, right now, we deepen it. So in your safe place, see what you see. What are the sights, the colors? What do you hear? Maybe there's a scent in the air. What are the surfaces or textures you can touch? And again, maybe giving that place a name for you. And I know I've kind of given you the speed version of this resource. You can try it on your own more slowly. But maybe you even notice just in these couple minutes a little bit of calming, a little bit of potential. This is, again, something you can do anytime, anywhere. If you only have time for one of the three, any of them will be helpful. If you have time for the 1, 2, 3 punch, go for it. It might help you fall asleep, this practice, at night too. Just coming back to awareness of right here. The next little tip I want to give you is about orienting. Meaning, again, just bringing your awareness right here, right now. Most of anxiety is about a memory of something that did happen or an anticipation of the future. Lots of us are having those anxious ones about what the future will bring. But thankfully, even right now, most times we can come to a moment of recognizing right here, right now, we're okay. And we can highlight that awareness by orienting with our senses, to just looking around. We often teach kids and grown-ups, look around where you are right now and see 5 things. Name 5 things you can see. Notice 4 things you can touch. See what those textures feel like. Maybe there's 3 things you can hear. Maybe there's 1 or 2 scents in the air. It's good maybe to bring something with you, a lotion, a vial of essential oil. Aroma goes really quickly to turn off the alarms in our brain. And maybe there's a taste in your mouth or a nice cup of tea nearby. Bring your awareness to taste. And again, observe to what degree for you right now things can calm by coming to the moment. Another mindful practice you can use, I know even if you don't get breaks on your shift, you are going to be washing your hands. Use those 20 seconds to try to be present with your senses. See the pattern of the lather on your hands. Feel the warmth of the water. Maybe there is a scent to the soap. Hear the water. You know, we've all been taught to sing happy birthday twice. That might be a song that makes you happy, but maybe there's another song or a mantra or a prayer that calms you. Sing that in your head. This is 20 seconds of resourcing. This is 20 seconds of not being exposed to the stuff that might be more overwhelming. These moments matter, they count, they help. You might choose to sing at other times too. We know that there are certain kinds of behaviors that not only bring us into rest and digest, but bring us into what we're now understanding what's called a ventral vagal state of feeling safe and connected and loving, a more transcendent state. And singing gets us there. When we hum, when we sing with others, it really calms our nervous system. The vibrations in our chest, the focus on the melody, on the words, brings us right in the moment. Many of us have memories of being sung to as a little one, of singing as part of a religious or spiritual ceremony. I understand a video going viral of a nurse singing Amazing Grace that's really moving people. Singing is ever available to you. Humming inside your head is great. It's really calming. Crying is an awesome resource, not a sign of weakness. It releases endorphins. It helps with that ebb of those waves of emotion. We know our bodies are designed to release natural good feelings and neurotransmitters when we cry, just like we get some natural morphine when we're in pain. Laughter is great medicine. I know you might have some gallows humor. That's not disrespectful. Laughing is great. The wonderful thing about laughing, like smiling, is if we do it on purpose, we just start ourselves doing it for no reason. There's not even anything funny. It has the same positive benefit on our mindset, our well-being, and on our immune system. Again, placing your hands on your heart like we did. There's this beautiful vagus nerve that goes from our brain through all the social engagement muscles in our face, the ones that help us show warmth to other people and receive their warmth, goes through our heart to our gut. If we put pressure on it with our hands, with a pillow, with a stuffed animal, it's almost as if we're getting a hug. It has the same calming effect. And as I showed you before, this havening touch, I'm going to include in the resources a 6-minute video about havening, which is sometimes used to process trauma. For your use, I'm suggesting using it for calming and affirmation. And so you'll see that this touch from the shoulders to the elbows, the palms of the hands against each other, which you're going to do when you're washing your hands, calms us. When we combine that also with our mental focus on an affirmation or in other forms of havening with distracting mental activities like singing a song, we get double kinds of soothing waves in the brain that calm us. These are available to you easily, anytime, anywhere. A couple more ideas how to return to that beautiful peace that may come in the present moment, those moments that limit your exposure to stress and overwhelm. Notice how you begin and end your shift. Perhaps you start your shift with jazz hands to a favorite coworker, even if that's a new coworker. I understand a lot of you are going to be on new teams with whom I believe you are going to bond quickly, or you give somebody the thumbs up sign or a smile when you come in, or you start your day with your favorite donut and cup of coffee. Find some way to start your day. Maybe some deep breaths before you get out of the elevator or you leave your car. I'm going to talk in a little bit about ways to end your shift too. How do you recenter during breaks? Even if they're brief, it may just be during that hand washing. It may be if you get a break to eat something, mindfully observe what you're eating. Taste it, smell it, feel it, enjoy it thoroughly. Maybe you need a little movement or exercise or a few yoga poses. Maybe you need to hear the voice of family members. We know that hearing the voice of people we love works better than just seeing their words on text. Pay attention to what soothes you at work. Find those little moments, those little routines, and identify to whom you can turn for non-judgmental support. These moments of support, this is one of the ways we get through hard things. You may be worrying both about your risks for physical exposure or your risk of feeling like other people don't show up for you, which is a very deep wound for us humans, especially when bad things happen. But on the contrary, when people do show up for us, we have just profound gratitude for us, and it helps us as social mammals to cope. So I want to bring our awareness now from how to bear some of the deep emotions and bodily sensations. I must say too, another trick before we move on. If you're having big emotions, sometimes if it's okay with you to just bring awareness to your body sensation and let go of the thoughts and let go of the feeling temporarily, sometimes we can better just tolerate the sensation that's here. Just taking one part of the experience and uncoupling it momentarily from the thoughts and from the feelings. But I want to shift now to what can we do with our minds? Are these human minds that want to focus on the negative, that want to remember it as if it's happening again, that want to anticipate the bad things even though they're not here yet? Again, we want to bring mindfulness and compassion to soften these experiences. Some mindsets that might help you. One is to set your intention over something you can control. What do I mean by that? If you set your intention, I am going to save every patient I see today. That might not be under your control. I'm going to be treated by respect by everyone I work with. I hope that's true. That's a wonderful aspiration, but it's not under your control. Under your control is, I'm going to try to be a positive support to the people around me. I'm going to aim to bring as much compassion and patience as I can to the people I work with. I'm going to try to be good to myself on my breaks today. We want to help ourselves have a sense of self-efficacy. I'm going to bring tools to bear that I think might have a chance of working. Reminding ourselves of that as opposed to what's out of our control sets us up for success and feeling like we're meeting our own expectations. We already talked about compassion over empathy. You can direct your awareness to hope. Our human brains want to go to disaster, to negativity. That's how we've survived through evolution. Yet Dan Siegel, I mentioned before, tells us at any moment we can direct where our awareness goes. We might observe, oh, my brain is going to catastrophe. But you know what? I want to point it over here. I want to point it to, hey, that patient who's doing better today than yesterday. I want to point it to my coworker who's really being terrific inspiration. I want to point it to a memory of a lovely time with my family. I want to point it to something good that's likely to happen in the future. Hope keeps us going. Similarly, gratitude. There's research that shows compassion and gratitude have a big impact on our physical health, our mental health, even our immune functioning. Take some time to notice what you're thankful for. Your brain wants to notice all that we might lose. Bring it back to right now, these people I love are safe. In this moment, this is what I can count on. I am grateful for those things. We need to do it on purpose under stress. And again, as I've been emphasizing, remember you are not alone. There are people here to take care of you, and there are other people all around this globe sharing similar suffering. Sometimes misery does love company, not in a morbid way, but in a compassionate way, to know whatever suffering we have this moment, there's somebody maybe near to us, there's somebody maybe very far away from us. There's many other humans in the same exact place. It is some consolation we are not alone. We also want to learn to challenge these fearful, catastrophic thoughts when we flipped our lid that our brain wants to go to. If we can get our lid down enough to try to think in a more nuanced way, we always have the option to challenge those thoughts that come up. Common kinds of thoughts under stress. I have no control. We bring our awareness then to, there are steps I can take. There are hygiene practices I can use. There are kind of stress resilience techniques I can try. If the thought comes, I am doomed, come back to, you know what? I have strengths. I have resilience. I have survived other things. When you feel alone, remember there are people you can reach out to. It might be in these new strange ways over video platforms, but there are ways people, here we are together, forming community, reaching out to each other. When you feel trapped, remember your choices. When you worry that the people you love are doomed, come back to today we're okay. We are likely to get through this. When your brain goes to what ifs, which they tend to do, and I tell my clients all the time when they go, what if? Then they just hold their breath. Answer the what if. Respond to it. Challenge yourself, what would I do? We can usually come up with some answers. And when we have an answer of what we would do, we start to calm down a little bit. And then we need to turn our awareness to the positive what if. And what if we get through it? What if we're stronger on the other side? What if through some miraculous kinds of interventions or creative human innovations, we get through this a little less scathed than we thought? As well as calming our minds, our bodies, our emotions, we need each other. We need to seek support and bring our awareness to the support that's there. I tell people that when it comes to secondary traumatic stress, this is not just an individual issue. This is an occupational hazard. It takes a village, it takes a community, it takes compassionate organizations to help with occupational hazards. I trust you are going to be finding this. There's also things, really creative things you can advocate for it or help create yourself if they're not already there. There's a wonderful team at the University of California, San Francisco, who's put out a manual on creating cultures of compassion. And what they say that compassionate cultures, workplaces do, one, they monitor and acknowledge as inevitable the risk for vicarious trauma or trauma, and they treat it. They make individualized treatment plans. They don't make people ashamed. They don't pretend it's not happening or tell people it's their fault or that's a bad performance review. They assume this will happen. They say, when will this happen? Not if. And when, if it's happening to you now, let's see what we can do to help you. Compassionate cultures, as much as they can, integrate self-care at work, not just something you're supposed to do after your long shift and when you're also taking care of your kids or families, but ways, I know there's groups that are committed to bringing in good nutrition and hydration for frontline providers. Maybe I know there's going to be offers of meditations. There might be chances for yoga or a prayer or song together. Compassionate cultures also honor triumphs and efforts. I saw something on Facebook of a hospital that, right in the lobby had posted the successes of the day. It's helpful on your team meetings or huddles to bookend the discussion of all that's overwhelming and hard with affirmations about what's going well or what you can count on. Another way of limiting exposure. And compassionate cultures and organizations grieve together. I know as a therapist, sometimes we lose people through one means or another, and they're very private losses, and HIPAA constrains the ways that we can acknowledge to people that we've lost somebody, ways that we can mourn. But there are sometimes when organizations come together to create memorial services to help healthcare providers acknowledge in some communal fashion those that we've lost, whether it's our patients or our colleagues. I really hope that will be happening in our communities. I think you already know the ways to reach out to each other. Know that every time that you offer support to a colleague, it is helping them. When to seek professional support. Laura Vandernoot-Lipsky's written a terrific book called Trauma Stewardship, in which she talks about for healthcare providers, mental health care providers, for stewards of our environment and social justice programs, those of us taking care of our planet or our world in any ways may, again, develop some degree of secondary traumatic stress. And Trauma Stewardship, her book, is about how to do this work in an ethical and sustainable way. So again, some of your reactions may be transient. If they become prolonged, getting stuck in some of those difficult, negative, intense feelings of helplessness or hopelessness, guilt or fear or anger, cynicism, seek help. If you find that you're vigilant for danger, you may see and experience things other people don't, and so your brain will be aware of those possibilities. If you're looking over your shoulder too much, get help. If you find you can't access your spirituality, your creativity, your ability to sing and laugh, or if you feel like you just can't feel anything, you're too numb, if you're physically exhausted, if your immune system is has had a toll taken on it, if you find that you're avoiding too many things, it's time to get help. If you develop addictions that are getting out of control, it is completely understandable. I often say about trauma, quite sarcastically, and you can hear I'm generally a pretty compassionate person, but I'm sarcastic about trauma as the gift that keeps on giving. I think it's completely unfair. Bad, overwhelming things happen to people, bad enough that the symptoms should be that they feel like that's still happening or about to happen again, completely unfair. That in that kind of desperate state of feeling it's still or again happening, like that movie Groundhog Day over and over again, people get desperate. They want to do anything, understandably, to feel better, and they deserve support. But then that they're set up for health behaviors that may bring them stigma, that may bring them more risk to their health, to more trauma, I think is completely unfair, yet completely understandable. Another set of categories is how to leave it behind at the end of the day. This is where we want to limit your exposure. Some strategies to disengage at the end of the day. I want you to come up with some rituals. I've got one in a minute on my next slide, but I'm hearing that the ritual for a lot of healthcare providers may be going home, taking off your clothes in the garage, sending them to the laundry, and getting in the shower. You may also develop a ritual of when you get in your car to put on soothing music, to take 3 deep breaths before you go to home or wherever you're staying. When you take that shower, like washing your hands, feel the warm water. Hear the sound of the water hitting the shower. Feel the soap. Smell the scent. Find a way to say, this is the end of my day. Review your day without judgment. We're learning that what critical stress debriefing, think of it, incident debriefing doesn't help, to talk to people about the traumatic things that you've seen while it's completely natural is repeating your exposure. If you've seen something bad, that's one exposure. If your mind ruminates on it, which it wants to, 27 times, or tells the story to 3 people, you've now had 30 exposures. But it does help to review your day in a non-judgmental learning way, to say, okay, brain, you're ruminating on it. What do I need to learn? Is there a takeaway? If there's a takeaway, great. I've got it. I'm writing it down. It'll help me do a better job tomorrow. Thank you, brain. I'm now directing my awareness elsewhere. And then direct your awareness to some of these other things we've talked about, to something that soothes you. There is a very wise psychologist in Australia named Jackie Burke who runs sexual assault crisis centers in Sydney. And she has developed a way to help her staff with vicarious trauma. As one shift is coming on fresh, they meet individually with somebody who's ending their shift for 10 or 15 minutes, and they ask 3 questions to help people end their day. This process also works by journaling if you don't have a colleague. And the 3 questions are, what disturbed you today? With just the headlines, not the gory details. Here's what happened. I saw this really sad thing. I'm grieving, I'm afraid, I'm anxious, whatever it is. Here's what's disturbing me. First, it's just naming the event with a headline or chapter heading. Next is, how is it impacting you? I want to cry, I'm exhausted, I'm angry, I have pictures I can't get out of my mind. Third question is, what do you need to make it okay now? Not going to solve the whole issue. Right now, I need to hear my loved one's voice. Right now, I need to talk to my supervisor about what additional help I need tomorrow. Right now, here's something I need to leave it behind. Practice these questions. Once you get home, we know that comfort and normalcy, normal routine, and basic self-care are some of the most powerful. We know this with kids. Blowing bubbles here in the picture, that helps us take one of those long exhale breaths. But with kids, we know when they've been through rough times, before fancy trauma treatment, they need to know there's a routine to the day. They need to have nutrition, hydration, a regular bedtime. These kind of things. We need movement to work out that all that fight and flight energy, or to re-energize ourselves if we're shut down. Play, creativity, comfort, support are great. Limit your news exposure. You've probably already had enough bad news in your day. Nature, super healing, even if it's looking at photographs of nature. Meditation is great. You may not have that practice yet. There's some wonderful apps. Insight Timer has 40,000 free meditations of any length, of any style that you can access. TherapistRefresh.com, one of the things that we offer are free meditations for healers. Short ones, a few longer ones now to use at the beginning, the middle, the end of your day to resource your energy, your compassion, to help ground you, to deal with triggers. We have one for resting or falling asleep. 10% Happier, that app is now free for healthcare workers. These are easily accessible, they're wonderful. And they can help you, as I've said, with sleep, are great time to listen. If you are having urges for coping in ways that are not so healthy yet understandable, as I've said, the 1 glass of wine might be okay for you, the whole bottle probably not. Lisa Ferrance is a therapist out in Maryland who has written 2 wonderful books about helping with self-destructive urges. And what she says is most things that calm us in ways that become, outside of moderation, become unhelpful to us, they communicate something. I need help, I'm in trouble. They release endorphins or other feel-good neurotransmitters, and they bring us soothing. They work because they're so efficient. They do all those 3 things at once. And so she says if we're going to try to limit these in ourselves because we don't want the negative consequences of them, we have to offer ourselves some sort of alternative life preserver, something that also communicates a message, releases good feeling hormones, and soothes us. She reminds us that most urges ebb within about 20 minutes. So if we can, if each of these 3 categories, her little acronym is CARES or caress, communicate alternatively, write in a journal, sing a song, talk to a friend, release endorphins. If we can do 5 or 10 minutes of each of these, we're going to surf that urge or increase our chances. Releasing endorphins, laughing, crying, doing a bunch of jumping jacks, cold water. These all release endorphins. Put on some music and dance. Make and play a playlist of songs that inspire you. And then self-soothe. Pet your dog or cat. Get under a warm blanket. Have a cup of hot chocolate. Do something that soothes you. Those things might get you through the 20 or 30 minutes in a way that will actually renew you without stigma, without side effects. Maybe not as fast, but well. As I begin to come to a close here on my remarks, I want to bring your awareness again to hope. We know when people are exposed to overwhelming events, yes, they may suffer in that continuum. We also know they are very likely to grow. There's a number of concepts that are inspiring. McGonigal talks about the positive impacts of stress. I have her TED Talk and her book listed on my references. She did a study where she thought that the people with the most stress in her group were going to have the worst physical and mental health outcomes. And she was wrong. The people with at least a certain degree of stress on a cellular level, they were doing better. It sounds a little crass, but actually what doesn't kill us really does make us stronger. There's a concept of vicarious resilience. We could have vicarious trauma. We watch other people go through bad things. We feel like it's happening to us. We watch them endure through hard things. We are inspired by their courage. We are inspired by their survival, and that enriches us. There's a concept of post-traumatic growth, about how we grow through surviving trauma. On the other side, we often find we have strength we didn't know. We find that we have new perspective, new priorities. We find that people showed up for us we never imagined would, and that really soothes our soul. There is the concept of compassion satisfaction, not just compassion fatigue. By doing work where we offer compassion to others, where we have a chance to be helpful in a situation where a lot of other people are feeling powerless, it does grow our heart. It does inspire and enrich us. The chance we also have with trauma as we come out the other side is that we make meaning of it, and that can enhance our spiritual growth. Doing work with purpose, as you all are doing, it strengthens us. It's a great privilege, even as we also accept risks in doing it. As I'm coming to a close here, I also want to let you know we are going to make these resources available to you as quickly as we can. Therapist Refresh, another thing that we offer is what we call a Monday mantra. Subscribing to our site is completely free. Every Monday we send out a resourcing, inspiring, some kind of information to help you make your work more sustainable and to know that lots of other people Monday morning are in a community with you, receiving the same resource. So if you want to sign up there, that's certainly one of the places where we will post these resources. We want to thank you for your service, all that you are doing. Karin and I, when we end any Therapist Refresh resource, we wish you good healing. I'm just going to briefly show you there are 4 pages of references that will be available to you in the recording, in the slides as we make them available. And I want then to turn attention back to Sarah for a few minutes, who can tell you more about the Michigan Frontline support, who's helping to organize this event today. And then she's going to funnel to me your questions so we can give you more specific guidance about what's most on your minds today. Thank you.
Just the biggest thanks to Sharon, Gould, Steinberg for such an amazing presentation. We are getting lots of feedback right now of how useful this has been. We really look forward to spending the next half hour or so fielding some questions and questions that might be coming up as we're answering some of the questions. And as Sharon said, we will be making this publicly available. And so please I chatted to everybody on the call, the 3 websites where it's going to be available. It's going to be available through Therapist Refresh, through MI Frontline Support, and through strengthsofallparts.com. So we will make sure to send out these announcements as well as once we get it up online. Okay, here we go. I have Felicia Brabeck on the phone, or not on the phone, on the call with me. We're just going to take a few minutes to introduce to everyone on the call our initiative called MI Frontline Support. To give you a little bit of overview on what the initiative is how it's trying to connect and provide support to frontline responders. It's really the coming together of the mental health community to think about ways to reduce barriers to accessing care during this time, mental health support during this time. We're just going to take 2 to 3 minutes to do this, and then we're going to switch back to Sharon to make sure that we get all of your questions answered. So Felicia, I don't know if you want to just give us a brief overview.
Sure. First, I want to express my sincere gratitude to all of you who are on the front line for putting your own lives at risk and that of your families, and for keeping us healthy. Thank you so much. And feels like this is the least we can do. And so a small group of us started talking about wanting to be able to support frontline folks. And that idea stemmed from conversations that some of us had with friends who are on the front line, and friends were feeling anxious and worried, and wanting to be able to connect and not feeling like they knew where to go. And so the small group of us got together and decided that we wanted to try and reach out to as many mental health providers as we could to see if folks would be willing to provide services to frontline responders. We're obviously starting here with our local contacts, but we'd like to be able to do it for folks statewide. And so there are 2 parts to our initiative. The first is asking providers to be part of serving frontline responders and making themselves available to frontline responders. And then the second part is making all that data available and all those providers available to our frontline responders. So yesterday we started sending out emails to folks, providers and networks that we all have, asking for folks to join us. In the first 24 hours, we have almost 100 providers who have signed up. And so right now, one of the things that we're doing is, verifying those providers, and we are right now having new providers come online on our website. And so we're hoping that by tomorrow we will have a good chunk of folks on that website for folks. And the other part that we are working on simultaneously is, and I know Sharon had several resources for folks, but we're hoping to also have on our site a resources tab for folks to be able to access different things as well.
Great, thank you, Felicia. And if the group here, as you're listening, have specific resources that you feel would be particularly useful, please just send all of your suggestions here in the chat. Our goal is to make this as useful to you as possible. And so your input is the primary source of how we'll be organizing some of this. And we're happy to answer some questions about how this how the MI Frontline support will be working as we answer questions with Sharon. Okay, Thank you, Felicia. And I'm going to bring Sharon back online here. A list of beautiful questions, and please keep them coming as we are working through the questions today. The first question that people had, Sharon, and there's just is somebody said, I'm struggling with the fact that I've never in my career treated another human being the way I was forced to treat them now. That is not how I quote unquote quote nurse. Right. It is literally bare bones, just keep them alive. There's no peace, no dignity, no comfort, no time. We are stretched so thin. We barely get breaks. I'm struggling with how to deal with that every day for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that is a really powerful question. And this is where we come back to setting that intention. And we're working in unprecedented times and in a different way, and that makes sense to me how distressing that is, that the things that usually resource you and allow you to work in keeping with your full skill set and your values, to not have access to that is devastating. And that's when it helps, the best you may be able to do is to set your intention by what you can do right now, which is really different. I can help keep people alive. You can try to hold space for them in your heart. You can sometimes even name out loud to yourself or others, I so wish there were more time or it was possible to hold your hand and sit with you. We're doing our best. We're sorry it's this way. And then we need to make space to grieve that. That is a risk factor, not being able to use your full set of resources, but forgiving yourself for that, knowing that you are just doing the best that you can, and what you are doing is incredibly meaningful. Yeah, we don't always have choices over what we face, and this is one of them. We have choices on how we respond. And you may just in your heart, as much as you can, be sending that loving kindness that you can't put into the same kind of practice you usually would. Yeah. And just know we're holding that with you. You're not holding that alone.
Yeah.
We all feel that in our hearts, how hard that must be.
Yeah. Great. And I think a follow-up question to that. So if we labeled some of these questions of kind of just the stuckness that we're in right now, and really just how stuck we feel on so many different levels. Somebody asked, it's really easy in these times to create obsessive behaviors such as cleaning, rewashing hands, worrying that you're not quote unquote clean enough.
Yes.
Worrying you're going to share the virus with family members.
Right.
Etc. And they asked, do you have any special coping skills or ideas for that?
Yeah. It is the nature of our brains to obsess of these things. Of course, our brain is going to ruminate for us because we want to do everything we can to protect our own well-being and the well-being of the people we love. And yet, again, when we flipped our lids, that part of our brain that's thinking is a little more primitive. It's a little more instinctual. It is not nuanced. So sometimes we can mindfully observe, I am having the compulsion to do this for 40 seconds, for 4 minutes, when I know that 20 seconds is probably enough. It's no longer helping me, it's making me more anxious. And we want to try to maybe take that deep breath. We maybe want to roar with it, recognize I'm having a compulsion. I observe it shows up with my brain showing me pictures of if I don't do this more, something terrible is going to happen. We want to allow it. Thank you, worry brain, for being on it 20 times more than you need to be, but you're on it. And then trying to release it. Nurture yourself in a way, start to sing, do a exhale, and say, what does my wise mind tell me? Wise mind to low. My wise mind tells me 20 seconds. Okay, I'll do 30 seconds. That seems really reasonable. I'm going to do everything I can. All I can do is everything I can. And then I'm going to help my family more to be present with them and to calm myself. That's going to help my nervous system, my immune system, and my ability to regulate them. Yeah, just like the urges to have the whole bottle of wine, the urges to not stop washing, we kind of want to kindly meet it and then try to redirect it to what our wisest self knows. There's going to be a lot of need for self-forgiveness, for self-compassion. and recognizing all these urges as completely normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
I think another kind of big comment that's come up was that somebody said it was very helpful to hear that discussing all of the gory details is actually re-exposure, which is, I know, something that in our trauma field, and it is kind of newer, a newer understanding over the past couple of decades, really, that the repeated talking about is actually just re-traumatizing. And this person says, before hearing this, I really would have described myself as a verbal processor.
Yes.
Yeah, my practice has been to talk through an experience or to write about it, and then my mind can usually move on.
Yes.
So this person asks, is that a legitimate need, or is it possible to really just give a headline to it and to move on? So could you speak a little to that?
Yes, another great question. And as a trauma therapist, I work with this all the time. Because people do need to have what they've been through be witnessed, and a lot of us are verbal processors. So there are some ways to process it verbally that are less traumatizing than others. I always say to people, we now understand of all the very many different kinds of trauma treatments, the common thread in how to process trauma memories is to remember and make it different. Every time we call up a memory, we do have re-exposure. We call up that memory, we evoke it, we're about to store it again in memory. So if in those several minutes or seconds that it's called up, we can somehow make it different, that's what we then remember. So if you want to process it verbally, say to somebody or write in a journal, here's the headline. Focus on how is it impacting me, right? It is impacting me in these ways, in my body, my mind, my spirit. This is what's sticking with me. And this is what can be different in this moment. In this moment, I'm not alone with it because my friend, my colleague is listening. In this moment, maybe in the moment I'm remembering, I felt trapped and I couldn't do all the caring things I would do. In this moment, I can be really caring to myself. In this moment, I can leave a room. In this moment, I can slow down and express kindness to somebody. In this moment, I can enact something with my body I couldn't do. How is it different? How, just in the remembering it right now, can I make it different? Because then we also now have a new memory of. I talked about it, and it wasn't just re-traumatizing. I didn't just go through it again as if it's happening again. I talked about it and I bookended it, right? I bookended it with, thank you for listening, or now I'm going to have a good meal. Or tomorrow, maybe it'll be a little easier. Or also, when that bad thing happened, there was some support. There was a moment of hope. So that's it. We want to process it, but make it different. We want to combine it with a resource.
Great.
Yeah.
That's very helpful, Sharon. For those providers, the frontline responders who, following some of the tips that you've provided today on kind of when I know I need to access additional support, could you give people just some brief overview of what they might expect as they reach out, if it's their first time reaching out for support from a therapist?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And what that might look like.
Right. We always encourage people when you're reaching out to a therapist to look for a good fit. And that's really subjective. There's lots of great therapists. Some will be a good fit for you and some won't. It is okay to call people, to email people, to ask if they have availability, to ask them to describe. I find it helpful to talk to someone on the phone, actually, even if they make initial email contact, hearing voice to voice, to ask people, how do you work? How often do you meet with people? What's your style? What do you find? How do you treat trauma or stress or burnout? Are you experienced with it? You get a flavor. You start to get a feeling in that phone call. In a first meeting, I sometimes encourage people to try maybe 2 meetings, because sometimes in a first meeting, both you and the therapist might be finding your place with each other, or you might be really anxious. To give it a couple tries. But if something inside you says, I don't know, I'm just not comfortable talking to this person, or the feedback they're giving me, it's just not landing. They're very nice. It's really okay. As therapists, we expect, we want people, we encourage people. Let's meet a time or two to make sure it's a good fit for both of us. And it's their job too to say, I don't think we're a good fit. Somebody else has a better expertise or style for what you're looking for. So that's really okay. And some interventions, a lot of people get help from therapy in 6 to 8 sessions. The hope that comes from just making an appointment brings relief for people. So it can be sometimes just a few sessions or several sessions. Sometimes we also see people for weeks, for months, for years, depending on what you're working on. It's okay to check the people on their referral list, to see if they take your insurance, to see if they offer a sliding scale. If you're not able to pay their full fee, there may be some people able to offer services pro bono. There are also going to be people offering groups. Perhaps at Therapist Refresh, we also have put out one course on trauma. We're going to be putting out more on vicarious trauma, either live classes or videos. And I know other people in the community are going to be adding to resources. Maybe we were talking yesterday about being able to put out, have various ones of us offer 20 minutes here and there of a live session on a coping skill. So those could be coming your way too.
Yeah. And this, one of the really great things about MI Frontline support is that we're consolidating that information for you. So we are listing what insurances a provider takes, whether they are doing sliding fee work, and most people right now are really stepping up and wanting to do sliding fee work, and that will include people that are able to provide pro bono services.
And right now, all of us are doing it online.
Right.
And also remember, turn first to your employers, your organizations. They have employee assistance programs. There's going to be volunteers within the hospitals from psychiatry, from social work, who are also going to be providing services for you, who might even be your frontline people, your first line of defense. So look there. But again, as I said, this is going to take a village. If there's something as community therapists we can do, we're here.
Yes. Yeah. And you should also know that if you have like a high deductible insurance plan, people are really willing to work with people to use a sliding fee, a scale or a sliding scale if you really can't use your insurance because the cost is prohibitive at this point in time. The mental health community's commitment is to providing support to our frontline providers right now, and we as a community are coming together to figure out how to do that and to figure out what is needed. And that is just a deep commitment of us as a profession and what we are trying to do. Sharon, could you maybe even speak to what you might expect in a first session as you meet with a therapist, which I know is hard to generalize?
Right. It can vary. People have different styles, but usually in our first session, we're trying to gather history and understand your presenting problem. So a first session might be more structured. The therapist might have more questions for you. I know people who do more trauma-informed work are going to be in that first session, even as you might have been holding for weeks your whole story and you want to kind of spew it all. We're going to slow you down because we don't want you to have the re-exposure or leave feeling worse. So we're going to say, I care about what happened to you. I am courageous to witness it with you, but we're going to slow it down. We're going to break it down. I want to get some context. I want to know who you are as a person. I want to know your strengths. That's also when you talk about traumatic memories. Bring your awareness to when you knew it was over for a stressful event, and what are your strengths you're bringing to bear to it. So we might slow you down with the story. We might give you a lot of psychoeducation information about this. These sound like the symptoms or the syndrome you're experiencing. This is what we know about it and how to treat it. And this is what I can offer. And, perhaps some very rough estimate on how long that might take.
Great. Thanks, Sharon.
And then time to answer your questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just moving back into some more of kind of the content focused questions. Somebody asked, is it normal to feel stress or anxiety present in physical manifestations or physical forms like
Yes.
responses?
Our mind and body are completely connected. Stress, we almost always feel it in our body. Our nervous system is not just limited to our brain, it goes through our whole body. Dan Siegel again says it's not just even limited to our body. We resonate with each other's bodies and nervous systems. Yes, that you are feeling what we call your animal defenses stimulated, which are fight and flight and freeze if you get the urge to do something and the constraint at the same time. It's to reach for help As human mammals, as social mammals, we do that, and it is at times to collapse. All of these are states that are in your body, so you will feel it there. Absolutely. And that's why I gave you some strategies today to try to calm it there, because it's really going to live in your body, as well as observing what's happening in your thoughts or in your heart and spiritual self too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Your body's going to respond the same to this stress as through evolution. We're not that nuanced yet as to, for some reason I always use the image of running from a grizzly bear or a dinosaur. We have the same physiological arousal. Yeah.
There have been some questions as well about the impact on parenting.
Yes.
As a frontline provider with children.
Yes.
Specifically, someone said, I'm wondering a lot about first responders that may be experiencing separation from their children for health reasons.
Right.
If you have any thoughts about resources that might be available for looping those children into sessions or services, and how we might think about, and I know this is like a multi-pronged question, which therapists we learn to not ask, but I'm going to ask it anyways, how we might begin to help talk to children about what's going on right now.
Yeah. So I know this is on a lot of people's minds. And we know through really stressful times, one of the things that's most helpful to children is feeling their connection to their loved ones. That is one of the most resourcing things. Fortunately, in this day and age, we don't have to be physically right next to them to do that. Your kids hearing your voice, recording your voice for your kids, reading them their favorite story, even if you can't be with them. Them hearing your voice, seeing you on the phone or video conference is really, really helpful. For them, keeping their lives as normal as possible. We're hearing there are some kids, of course, who are really anxious right now. Some are doing better, we're hearing from therapists, because they're home all the time and they don't have the stress of school. And because they are really regulated by being with their loved ones and having a day, even if it doesn't have the structure of school, having 3 meals, when that's possible, having some soothing activities, being able to use movement. These things really help kids. So keeping their day as normal and structured, even if it's new normal, as possible. Emphasizing to children, we don't want to deny their fears, but they get to give voice to them. We do also want to point them to hope. We want to point them, as Mr. Rogers says, to looking for the helpers. Even if they might be missing you, to let them know what you are doing to be a helper at this time, that can really inspire them. And finding the village of other people who help them, right? Even again, if it's over video conference, that is really helpful. Karen, my colleague, was sharing with me yesterday how her mom, her grandma from 3 states away, is showing up on video conference every day to do virtual babysitting for her 1-year-old, to put on a little puppet show and sing her songs. And these things really help. So we want to name some reality to kids, and yet tell them there are lots of people doing lots of things to help. And right this moment, point them to what is keeping them safe, or what they can do to help other people. That empowers them too. I know in our neighborhood, kids are drawing pictures to put in their windows so people can walk by and see something pretty.
Yeah, great. And I'm also just attaching in the chat here a infographic that I work to develop with some other therapists and mentors and colleagues in the area, which is thinking about safe communication with children right now, how to understand and interpret children's behavior right now, and how they might be displaying right now, their distress, their confusion, and how to communicate with kids right now to help settle their systems a little bit. That same group of colleagues and I are also developing right now, we're in the close to the final stages of developing a storybook, a coloring book for kids, that is a story that you can read to children, and then they can, color it in. That's helping to understand and kind of give language and words to what's going on right now.
I believe there was a Chinese version of a workbook too that was developed for kids we might be able to find access to. Yeah. And to remember that kids often show their feelings in their behavior. They might not just come to you and say, I'm sad or I'm scared. They might be acting out or shutting down. So we stay curious about those behaviors rather than trying to judge the behaviors themselves, curious what are the feelings underneath.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're beginning to wrap up. We've kind of covered all of the big questions here. If anyone has any final questions for Sharon or for myself, we would be glad to take them here at this time. We want you to know that the therapy community, the mental health community, is here to support you, and we're really so grateful for what you are doing, carrying us through, sharing a huge part of the burden of carrying us through this pandemic at this point in time. And we are really here to support and to do our part as well. And so we all welcome, I believe, I can't speak for everyone, but I think we all welcome, tips, advice, if there are things that aren't working so well, or that, big gaps where you feel like this is a resource that we're really needing, or, this thing is happening to a bunch of us. Do you have any ideas about what might be helpful at this point in time? And we are putting our brains together and trying to step up. And so please give us all the input that you have. And Sharon, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I have one other thought, that question about when we can't do all the usual nurturing things we do for our patients, what do we do? And I'm thinking it really is to bring your awareness to what you have done rather than what's still on your to-do list or couldn't happen. That recognizing what you are doing, how important it is, how significant it is, can be helpful. We want to recognize for you, we know what you're doing, and allowing yourself to rest awareness on what you have done, how you have helped.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to Sharon for putting together this beautiful presentation. We've had so many comments of how deeply soothing it's been and organizing for so many people. We as a community will continue, as Sharon says, it takes a village, be working together to provide support. So please do reach out to all of us.
And thank you to all of you who helped organize it, and all of you for being here today.
Yes, thank you.
Again, we wish you good healing.